Alright, in today's mod review, we take a look at the single most requested mod I have ever had on this channel, that being Fenriswolf's Laurelorn Forest mod. So kick back, grab a nice big old glass of milk, and let's jump straight into it.
Wow.
So before we get started with the mod review itself, I need to precede this one with a bit of an asterisk. Normally when I take a look at these mods, I have a huge mod list associated with them, so I can check for things like compatibility amongst various different mods. I can check it against, huge mods, I can check it against small mods, unit mods, lord mods, the whole kit and caboodle. Unfortunately, since the update from CA, I just haven't been able to get my mod list up and running properly. So for this particular mod, we're not going to really get into the compatibility section. I only have about 30 mods running with this one right now. That's all I could get it going. And unfortunately, a lot of the really big staple mods that I normally use weren't able to get up and running before I could get this mod review done. Like I said, we'll still go through the rest of it, just understand that that particular section is going to be kind of emptied out. The second thing before we really get into it too is you need to understand that this is still a work in progress mod. There's going to be the odd thing that's not currently polished up right now. There's the odd unit that has no unit card, so instead you just get a giant question mark or a blank state for it. It's not the end of the world. Just understand what it is you're getting in for, and we're going to kind of just ignore them. It's a work in progress. It is what it is. There's no point dwelling on it. So the Laurelorn Forest is a brand new faction that actually has a lot of named characters that I think a lot of us were really hoping to see from CA in the upcoming Wood Elves DLC, namely Ariel and the Sisters of Twilight. It also has another legendary lord that actually being a custom creation, as far as I'm aware, called Marisith. Full disclosure, Maris is the one I went with for this run because she's the only one I didn't actually recognize. But it's really cool because when the mod first starts out, you get a dilemma to pick if you want to be Ariel or if you want to be Marisith, and it'll basically just go forth from that point forward. If you don't pick Ariel, for example, she actually starts leading the Hunters of Kurnoth minor faction and becomes your enemy. So really, really cool start of the mod right out of the gates. The other sort of cool thing you get right out of the gates too is that there are a few custom units in this already, these being the Ghost Rider, Kithband Warriors, and Great Stag. You get all three of those into your starting army, so you can actually try them out and utilize them and see how they work. Man, the Great Stag, I fell in love with that thing almost instantly. The Ghost Rider, I would say, is probably a little overpowered at the moment right now. Not that it's the end of the world, as a single player campaign run, but man, that Great Stag is just so good if you use it properly, but it's also the really easy unit to screw up with using properly. Like, if you get it surrounded, it'll die in 2 seconds flat, but to use it to just charge into enemy cavalry, you can just utterly obliterate them. But regardless of which one you pick, you do get some really cool things. So for example, the Oak of Ages, neither faction gets it by default. If you start out as Ariel, you actually have to slog your way down there and take a look at it. Or if you're Marisith, you have to get to an amber income of 15 or more, and that actually takes quite a bit of time. And I still ended up foot slogging it down south anyways, because I wanted to meet the other Wood Elf faction and try and get a bit of alliances going and whatnot. But that actually also turned out to be a pretty difficult prospect. Because you are so far north of everyone, you basically only have two options: an extremely slow slog down south, conquering as you go, but that'll put you at war with most of the Empire, who are basically the only people keeping you safe from the other factions up top. Or you just have to make a beeline for it and then understand you're going to have a really, really weak starting economy until you get down there. It made for a really distinctly different style of Wood Elf campaign than I think I've played for most other factions so far. It was really cool to see, because ordinarily you start out, you're in Laurelorn, you build up your defenses, you move east or move west or east as required, and so on and so forth. But in this one, there's not really anywhere good to go, and you don't want to just expand out like a monster because you don't have the economy to support it. So we can't delve into compatibility, but what about balance? It's still a little shaky so far. Like I said, do bear in mind this is still a work in progress, so I'm sure things are bound to change in the future. But I would say, for example, that the newly added units are all maybe a little bit on the overpowered side. The biggest one for this is the Ghost Rider, who I would say just straight up 100% outperforms the Waystalker across the board. They're a Waystalker in terms of damage output, but they have even more ammunition and access to a bunch of spells. So you kind of never need to pick a Waystalker as a result. The Great Stag is maybe a hair on the powerful side, but it's not too bad at all. And the Kithband, are, again, a little bit better than their other equivalents are. So it's a touch overpowered in terms of battles so far, but like I said, I do expect that'll get rained down in a little bit in the future. Economy is super balanced right now. If you try to go, straight into doom stacks and stuff, your economy will utterly collapse. I almost made the mistake of doing that right early on, and thankfully I could just kind of compress and kick out some troops as required. Really enjoyed that aspect of the campaign side of things, actually, because you do have to keep making strategic decisions. Even into the mid game, you were still picking and choosing what you were going to do and where, because you just did not have the economy to support going too nuts. And speaking of the campaign balance, not having access to the Oak of Ages to start with is super self-balancing. Because the Oak of Ages normally gives you a pretty hefty discount on your units, and that's not something you have access to, it is very difficult getting powerful enough to actually have enough amber income to get the Oak of Ages, to get your unit discount in the first place. It's sort of like you need 10 steps to get anything done, and I actually really appreciated that aspect of it. You have to plan out turns in advance what you're trying to do. So then, should Laurelorn Forest be a permanent fixture in your load order? Probably, but again, it's kind of hard for me to say for sure because I don't have enough of my mod list up and running to say how compatible it's going to be. For what I've seen online, he's already considered compatibility for old versus new and thought of that. So I would say the chances of it being compatible are pretty darn high, and the balance, as much as it can be a little bit more annoying to face them in battles, it's not so ridiculous and dramatic that you're just going to utterly hate facing them or anything like that. It's just a little bit of over-tuning. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this particular mod review. We are definitely going to check back in on this mod as we go through the future and stuff, because I think this has a ton of potential, especially after the new Wood Elf DLC pumps out. But that is going to wrap it up for this one. As always, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.